5th, and we're going to take another try here at this academic accountability project, step-by-step instructions on how to make one of these reports. I'm going to call this the lightning round. We're going to quickly put together just the information that you need in order to create these reports. I'm going to include this link again in the comments section below, but just in case you're not able to follow that link or it doesn't work for you, this is where we're headed. A few people have said that mobile devices, cell phones, etc. don't work for these purposes, and you'll see why in just a moment. But this is the website you want to go to, and this is what it looks like. When you get there, the reason it doesn't render well, doesn't function properly on mobile devices is we need these, I call them hover menus. So it's when you hover over an item and more menus pop up in order to navigate. Once here, you're going to hover over home and then public data. Now I'm not going to go into financials, but I am just going to mention on the way by here that under public data and financial, this middle one, expenditures detailed by district, is where we're getting those reports that show the expenses per pupil per district. A note on that, a few people have come back and told me that may not be the total of cost per pupil, because I'm told regional education service centers may have their own cost model. So that may actually increase the cost, the expense of education per pupil. I have to air quote that because sometimes I'm mystified by the academic results we're getting. But those ESC, or Educational Service Centers, may add to the cost per pupil. So those reports are in here. You'll find the navigation menu when you're in here works exactly the same as I'm about to show you for academic accountability. Without further ado, I'm going to go down to test results, and then the middle option here, test results with student disaggregate by district. You can look at state level information. You can even drill down into schools if you need that information for any purpose. But for academic accountability, we're looking simply at the district level at academic performance and how the students are doing at the district level. So I'm going to click on that, and that will bring up a search page with a few different tools, and we can refine the information we're looking for. Here we are. So for now, I'm going to suggest skipping over this choose a school year. I'll tell you why in just a moment. And go into this search bar here, choose a district. Today, we're going to take a look at Rocky River City Schools. I'm going to select that. Now, if you happen to be looking for a school name that occurs more than once in the state of Ohio, like I think there are a couple of Cardinal schools and at least 2 Bethel schools, notice that after the school name you'll see the county name in parentheses. You just want to glance over there and make sure that you're selecting the school that you're after. This one I'm looking for, Rocky River, is in Cuyahoga County, so I've got the right one. I'm going to skip choose a subgroup for the moment. I'm going to come back to that for a little bit more detail and a little more nuance in a second follow-up report. But for now, I'm just going to look at the total student body at Rocky River and see how they're doing. So I'm going to click here to run a report. Here is where I'm going to go back into that choose a school year. What we've noticed, just a little quirk in the system at the Ohio Department of Education, these 2 school years, 16 and 17, keep getting unchecked. When you go out and run a district and come back in again, for some reason they get unchecked, so I don't even bother with it on the main search page. Once I have the district information brought up, I add back those 2 school years. Now you'll see that we have 3rd through 12th, and we have all academic disciplines, and we have all available digital years right now, 2016 through 2021. Prior years are available, but for some reason they're only available in, I think, PDF view. And for this, we want to be able to chart. So we're using this span of years, 2016 through 2021. Now, just a little hint in the upper right-hand corner on this data is the option to click more options and then export data. I'm going to do that, but a few people commented that that menu is not available. So when you're looking at these options up here, I've discovered that when you move the cursor outside of that box, if you happen to click anywhere, sometimes that menu will disappear. All you need to do is bring your cursor back into this field and the menu appears again. So click on the three buttons, more options, export data. We're going to export it as an Excel spreadsheet. That's a Microsoft specific spreadsheet, but I understand from feedback from some folks that Google Sheets, that's the Google equivalent of Microsoft Excel, should work. I can't speak to that because I don't have personal experience, but hopefully whatever you're using works well and you're able to contribute and run some of these reports. It's my understanding if you don't have Microsoft Excel, I think there's a free version you can use online. You might want to do a search if you haven't run into any issues or difficulties. So I'm going to click Export. Another little trick here, if you happen to, I'm going to save this in my Rocky River Schools folder. I've discovered just through trial and error that if you are trying to save it as a file name of a file that already exists, if you're trying to replace an existing file, it throws up an error on the Ohio Department of Education website. In order to avoid that, just make sure you have a unique name for your file. If you're naming it something else, just add a number at the end, a 1 or something. But I'm going to call this Rocky River App Data. App Data. And I'll just call this Basic. And I'm just going to name it with a date just in case I grab something later. I'll just call it AUG 2022. Bingo. So I'll save that into my Rocky River folder. And now, when I click on that, I'm able to bring up a chart here. A couple of pointers before I delve into the details of this. These areas in the spreadsheet with information, these rectangles are called cells. These are the horizontal lines are called rows, and the vertical are called columns. And here's a little trick. If some of your information is cut off, you can see that this is referencing mathematics, this is social studies, but these words are cut off. Here's a little trick. If you highlight that area by clicking on that column, this is column C, and then if I move my cursor just a little bit over in between C and D, my cursor changes from an arrow into, it almost looks like sort of a little plus sign with arrows pointing out both directions. I'm going to double click at that point, at that moment, and it will expand that column just wide enough to be able to read the information in there. So I'm going to do the same thing for the grade level, although I think we're going to be doing a pretty basic one just to get things started here. This, another trick in spreadsheets, if there's information on there in columns or rows that you don't need, you can delete it, or you can also right-click and just hide it. So that sort of makes the view, the information that you're viewing a little bit more consolidated, easier to read. Now here's a thing that's pretty consistent throughout all the information we're looking at Ohio schools. 2019-2020 school year is just pretty universally a bust. There's little to no information from any school district that was reported during those school years. So rather than include the column with bad information or no information, or those references to there's less than 10%, I'm just going to delete that. Now, in order to start creating a chart that references all this data, I'm going to copy and paste this information at the top, the school years. I'm starting with this. And I can highlight this by clicking and dragging and then letting go. I highlighted this area, and I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. There are two ways to copy and paste. You can click and drag to highlight, and then right-click and click copy, and then click over here and right-click and paste. Or I happen to know a handful of shortcuts on the keyboard on Microsoft Excel. Once highlighted, I'm going to hold down the control button and hit the letter C as in cat, which is copy. And then I'm going to click an area over here and hit Control V as in Victor. One's copy, one's paste. C is copy, V is paste. So now I have this same information copied over here. But this, each of these cells has some extra words in it. We don't need the reference to school year each year. We know what these years represent. So I'm going to go through each of these and delete the words school year. You'll see why in a moment. That cleans things up nicely. Now I'm going to highlight these 4 columns. Use that little plus sign trick again. If I click in the middle of any 2 of these letters, voila, it expands those nicely, nice and easy to read, and it just shows us the years that we're working with. So I'm going to start by taking a look at math. So let's take a look at math performance, the academic proficiency of all students in all grades, 2016 through 2021. Now, you can do specific grades by grouping, and there are plenty of those reports, and eventually we'll get around to that as we circle back around and fill in with more detailed reports for this Rocky River School District. For now, this is 3rd through 12th, but we can do more, kind of more drilled down in the grades. We can do 3rd through 5th, and then 6, 7, 8, and then high school as 3 different reports. You'll get a little bit more specific detail there, but this is just the entire student body. So what I'm going to do here in order to capture the information for math from all grades, 3rd through 12th, is create a formula, and I want an average. So I want an average of a whole series of numbers. Instead of manually doing the math, I can use Excel spreadsheet. I can use the spreadsheet to create a formula and do all that math for me consistently. And to create a formula, we start with the equal sign, and this one's average. We want an average of a series of numbers, so I'm going to type in equals average with no space, and then open parentheses. Now it's waiting for information on which of these cells to average. You can do the same sorts of things with addition, subtraction, etc., but for our purposes, we want average. And by going under mathematics, we're going to start clicking these, and you'll notice that it highlights each cell that you're selecting. It makes it easy to make sure that we have cells with good data and that we have the right cells selected. But in order to select multiple cells on the sheet, I want to hold down the control button. That allows me to select multiple different cells. So I'm going to mathematics in each grade, selecting it. By the way, if for some reason you forget to hold down the control button, this is what's going to happen. When you select the next one, it's going to start over again. No big deal. All you want to do is go back to your first box, select it, and then remember to go back to that control button and hold it down. So selecting all mathematics, math, 6th grade, 7th, 8th, and then in high school you'll see there are a couple of different maths. We've got Algebra 1 and Geometry. Some other schools that we've looked at include reference to, you might see Algebra 2, or other more advanced mathematics. If there's information in there, by all means, I suggest including it. If it has to do with math, let's get it into the calculation, into the formulas. But this one is complete. Now I'm going to close parentheses and hit enter, and voila, we have a number. The number is comprised of an average of all of those first column mathematics. So we could go through and manually type in that formula again in each of these, equals, average, etc. But there's a trick. Makes life much easier. When I click on this one that contains this formula up here, when I click on it, you'll see that this box appears with a green, it's green on my screen, green box in the lower right-hand corner. I can grab that corner and drag that box over to the right. It's going to duplicate that formula across the board. So it'll duplicate it for these columns. I created the formula in E, but now F, G, and H, which represent school years, 2017, 18, and 2020, those are now duplicated over here. And so we have our formula across the board. One neat trick, and it just makes it super easy visually to very quickly confirm the data. Let's say that in one of the school years we have some information that shouldn't be included. Let's say that somebody put a note in there like that the information available is less than 10%. I'm just typing in here manually. If this were part of the formula, we wouldn't want it in there. We can manually delete it. I'm getting rid of that by going into any of these the year in question, which refers to this column. Click here to highlight this cell, and then click in the formula box. It's going to light up for you all of the cells that are in that formula. So each of these, it's showing you right here, color-coded, which cells are part of the formula. These are all good. There's no bad data in any of these, so we're good to go. Now let's add English. So we're going to take a look at English proficiency. English, and we're going to do the same thing. Equals average, open parentheses, and then just go through and select these boxes. English, English, English. So we're at 7th grade, 8th grade, and then in high school there are 2. English 1 and English 2. And that's it. Close parentheses, hit enter. We have the formula, and we're going to drag across to duplicate for all the school years. So I've gotten in the habit, a little sort of visual trick, when I'm doing these and selecting these boxes, I tend to glance over to the right in each one of these and see if in following school years, if there happens to be any missing or bad information. The closest we have is one empty box here, but the empty box won't throw off your formula. Average, when you're running a formula, if there's no data, it will just simply skip that, so it won't impact it. But as I showed before, if this happened to include, the most common on these is less than 10%. If this were in that box, I would want to delete it. I would be able to do that by clicking on this one, clicking here, and then see how this box is referenced. This has a number. This is H29. So I can go here and just simply click with my cursor in there and delete H29. Now that box is gone. It's not referenced in the formula for that one calculation here. So I can delete that box. There's no data or bad data. Either way, you can get rid of it. Hit enter, and now we have a completed chart. In order to turn this into a visual chart, we're going to highlight this entire section. Once we highlight this, go to Insert, and then right here under, right in the middle of this Insert tab, there is a drop-down for Insert Line or Area Chart. When I click on that, the very first one is a line chart. I'm going to select that, and bingo. There we have a visual representation of the calculations we just ran. So this shows math and English from 2016 through 2021. This one isn't that bad. It actually shows, it actually starts at 80%, but I've seen some of these charts automatically default to beginning at 0. And so you have a huge space underneath your information you're looking for with no data. But in order to sort of refine this a little further, because our lowest point is 84%. So I'm going to change this to begin at the lowest point of the chart being, let's do 82. When I click on this, it creates a box around this data. When I right-click, I'm going to format axis. When I click on format axis, this minimum right here is the first one. It shows the bounds, the top and bottom bounds of the chart that we're forming, the minimum and the maximum. Minimum being bottom, maximum being top. It begins at 80 and ends at 94, but let's change that to 82. So we're going to add a 2 and then hit enter. So now you can see it begins, it goes from, it's showing that range from 82 to 94%, which is more refined on the data that we have. So that's our data set. I can get rid of that, and then you can change the chart name here to whatever you want. We can call this Rocky River Math and English, all students, all grades. I think that's a good name for it. Whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put that in position. I'm going to just sort of cozy this up a little bit to the bottom of this line so that I can include a note underneath here for the source. That's one of the nice things about the work that we're doing here. The source of this information is the school district itself. So the source comes from Rocky River City Schools and via the Ohio Department of Education. That's going to save a lot of grief and heartache for anybody publishing these reports. It eliminates all of that anxiety about the source. There are plenty of arguments about people's browsers and their news source and the evening news and which station they watch, etc. But there's no arguing with the source of this data. It comes from the school district. So we're going to write underneath here, source, Rocky River City Schools and Ohio Department of Education. Cool. And then sometimes what I'll do, I'll add the Protect Ohio Children logo, might add a reference at the top. Oh, of course, we need to have that up here so people know what this is when we pull it out of here. So we're going to call this Rocky River City Schools, and we'll call it, this is academic proficiency, all grades, all subjects. All grades, subjects. I'm actually going to come back in later. I'm going to use this one because Rocky River is anxious for this information. I'm going to lower this. I'll come back later. I'm going to add other subjects. We're going to add science. Social studies disappears often. Yep, here we go. Grade 6, beginning in 2017, 2018, schools did away with social studies, which is more than mildly infuriating, but it is what it is. Good. So here's the chart, and here's what this looks like. One thing I like to do to make this sort of pop out and easy to read, I'm going to make that first line bold, the description of what it is. Now, in order to pull this out as a chart that can be shared, the trick that I know is to use a snipping tool. Now, first thing is these background gray lines that indicate the cells are a little distracting. It makes it very visually overwhelming. If you click in the upper left-hand corner, there's sort of a little gray triangle. If you click on that, that's going to select the entire sheet. Then go under View and uncheck Grid Lines. It's going to make those gray boxes go away. Then just click anywhere, and it's going to unselect the entire spreadsheet. Then this snipping tool, mine I downloaded, it's just called Snipping Tool. There are a number of different pieces of software. All it is a way of capturing part of your screen manually. Whatever kind of screen capture tool you use, what we're going to want to do is just select this area, this information in the chart that we've made. So here we go. I've selected that for me, for Protect Ohio Children and our purposes. I will save that to the Rocky River file. I'm not going to save this one because I'm actually going to clean it up and add some more stuff to it, drop the logo in and everything. But that's how you create the chart. This one is done. Now, one more thing, don't sign off yet because it gets more exciting from here. So I'm going to minimize this. Wait until you see what comes next. It gets really exciting. So going back to this page, I'm going to go back to the search field. And you know how the conversation that's been taking place, it's just there's been this steady drumbeat, is the achievement gap. So there's a lot of talk, especially in sort of the high-strung racial anxiety that is now pervasive in K through 12 education. There's a lot of talk about the achievement gap, which put simply is the difference in academic achievement, proficiency, between white and black students. Now, for some strange reason, we're supposed to ignore all the Asian students who do better than the white students, but the achievement gap between white and black students, looking at Ohio's data, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it's actually getting worse in many regards in a lot of the charts that we're looking at. So if we're to believe, and I think we should all be working together to bring up the achievement of all students, if we're to believe that we are working together to make all students achieve better and reduce that gap between white and black academic achievement, what is happening in schools is achieving the opposite, a worse result. Black students are faring more poorly than they were before all of this COVID stuff. So remember I said before we skipped over this choose a subgroup? We're going to go into race and ethnicity now and run similar reports with race and ethnicity. Now, here's another weird thing. There we go. Going back to the search page, this Ohio Department of Education website leaves a little bit to be desired. If you let it sit for a while, it starts not functioning well. So I just did a refresh on the page. I'm back to this search page again. Let's look at Olentangy, which is a district near Columbus, Ohio. Here we go, Olentangy local. And we're going to look at race and ethnicity. I think I remember looking at this and seeing that there was we've got a pretty good population, good mix of lots of different ethnicity. And we still have those school years, good. So I'm going to export this just for illustration purposes, and we're going to play with this a little bit. I will save it as, I'm just going to save it as sample data. I'm going to come back in and delete this later because we don't need Olentangy right now. I think somebody else is working on it or did it. So sample data, Olentangy, good. All right, cool. This one will be, this gives us something to work with here. So in this one, I'm going to hide this, take these first 3 columns, expand them so we can easily read them, and then do the same thing. I'm going to copy and paste this, Control-C, and I'm just going to paste it right here to begin working with it, and clean these up. Oh, we need to delete 2019, and we're going to delete it here as well. Delete, shift to the left, good. So we got rid of that. I'm going to get rid of the words school year in each of these. All right. And then again, I'm just going to highlight these, double click in the middle to expand them. And then I'm going to start working with, again, you can drill down on certain grades. You can even go into certain buildings. As I showed you before, you can do grades together in groupings, like some people have done 3rd through 5th, and then 6, 7, 8, and then high school, to kind of show what's happening in the elementary school separate from middle school, separate from high school. But in order to begin the conversation with the school district and just quickly highlight how to do these charts, I'm going to put them together in one category and show, let's do Asian, white, and black. We can easily add in Hispanic and multiracial. There's lots of data here, but I want 3 so that you can see as I grab this and show the chart form what this starts to look like. So equals average, that's our formula, open parentheses. Now we're looking for Asian in all academics, in all grades. So we're just going to grab all of these for Asian. Remember to hold down the control button, Asian, 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 on down the line. If it has to do with academic proficiency, we're grabbing all academic proficiency for all Asian students in this district. And again, you can even break down further and just look at Asian math performance, sciences, English language, and then you can break down into, as I said, elementary school separated from middle school. But what I'm doing is across all grades and all subjects, all classes, and ranging from 3rd through 12th. So there we have it. There's really no data here in Math 1 or Math 2, so I'm just going to skip those. No data anywhere in here. There's my formula. I'm going to close parentheses, hit enter. I'm going to double check these after I copy the formula over and see if there's any bad data in any of these cells. I can do that by clicking here, then clicking here, which again, it's going to highlight those cells that are included. Puts a nice little color box around them. Anything that has bad data, and really the only thing you need to look for are any of these less than 10%. But these all look good. You can either check manually by clicking here, then clicking here and scrolling down, or as I said before, as you're looking at these, you can look to the right and left and see if in any of these rows, if there's any reference to a non-number, anything other than a number. So these are all good. There's no issues with any of those. Now on to white, equals average, open parentheses, and we're just going to grab all the white kids. hold down the shift, white, non-Hispanic, white, white kids, white, white. Okay. And again, I find myself, because I've done several of these, just glancing to the right as I'm selecting these and making a mental note. If I see any in here that don't have data, I want to make sure they're blank or have data. If it references less than 10% in any of these, I know that my formula is going to mess up when I copy it over and I drag it over to the right. So far, so good. I don't see any issues with any of these. We've got plenty of good data here to work with. So all of these in all subjects, we're going to take a look in aggregate how all the kids are doing by ethnicity. So I'm going to close parentheses, hit enter. We're going to take this and copy it over to the right. I already looked at those while I was doing the formula, and I know that there are no issues with any of these. So same thing here, equals average, open parentheses, and we're going to grab performance for the black kids. Black, 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 black. All right. So here we go through all of the grades in our third and final. We can add Hispanic and multiracial. Easy to do, and it makes the report more complete, especially in this school district that has a good, diverse mix of students. But for purposes of this video, and because I'm not actually going to use Olentangy myself, I'm just going through this just to show you how it's done. So here we go. We got all the black students, and I was doing the same thing, looking across. I don't see any issues with any of the information in any of the rows that we're selecting here. So our formula is going to be just fine for all of these following years. Good. Close parentheses, hit enter, and we have formula. I'm going to click the corner and drag it to the right, duplicates the formula, and now we've got a full chart. Same thing as before. I want to include a reference to the school name. I want to add the note at the bottom for the source. But for now, this is the information that creates the visual chart. I'm going to grab this, go into Insert, and the second item here, Insert Line or Area Chart, and click the first one. So now we're going to drag this over here, and this is a good example of one that's got a whole bunch of noise here. We don't have any information below 60%, but this axis includes the space for data down to 0%. So we're going to click here and right-click, Format Axis, and we're going to change this 0 to a 6. And we're going to start at 60. There we go. Now let's close this. And so we can see here what's happening. Here's a good example. We're supposed to be working on closing this achievement gap, which in the minds of many people, myself included, should mean bringing in more educational resources like tutors and working with the black kids to bring up their grades. There's no reason that the black kids should not be performing at least as well as Asian, white, Latin, Hispanic, you name it. This is it is heartbreaking for everybody, and it's getting worse. You can see that the trend is being exacerbated by what's happening in schools right now. So a side note for anybody that happens to get into conversation about the meanings of these reports, the conversation I keep having over and over again, and I encourage it, is you're going to find people that say, well, doesn't really show that much because COVID happened. And my answer to that is, yes, you're right. COVID happened, but looking at these charts, and some of them, believe me, are a lot worse than this school district, which is tragic. But looking at this chart is right here at this low point, and I think we've got another school year, then I think it's actually trending lower still, is right here on the bottom of this sledding hill. Is that the time when we should be talking about adding lots of other non-academic stuff to schools, or considering the overwhelming majority of parents' feelings and opinions that schools should be for education, and education is the key that unlocks all doors, should we maybe tap the brakes and pause on all the non-academic stuff being lumped into schools and fix this? Let's bring up the academics and work on that, and then let's all agree to come back to that issue or those issues of non-academic stuff that we might want to include in schools. Let's do that later, after we've fixed these issues, because these are clearly issues. We're talking about literacy rates, the ability to add and subtract, math, English, sciences are all very, very negatively impacted. So I've spoken my piece there. Again, this is a chart where you want to go to this triangle in the upper left-hand corner, select the whole page, go to View, and then Grid Lines, and then you can grab a Snipping Tool, New, and just select that area. Again, this is just a quick sort of rough sketch of what these charts ultimately look like. What I tend to do is kind of jazz them up with a logo, and again, that disclaimer at the bottom that goes down here. But that's how they're created. And if you can please, if you're comfortable with spreadsheets, jump online, run a couple, share them with us. We're going to get them out to the public through Protect Ohio Children, send them out to your friends or family. Bounce them off of us if you run into any difficulties or it's not coming out right, and we can get you some feedback. But we need to get this done, and there's 613 school districts in the state. If you know somebody that is comfortable with spreadsheets and you think might be a good fit, send them this video. Send them the link, and you can see online on Protect Ohio Children, there is an app button. You can see the school districts that have been run. We want to make sure that we're not duplicating our efforts here. If you can take a look at those, make sure you're not running a school district that somebody else already has. Any questions, or you're not sure if somebody may be working on a district, ping me. I'll get you some feedback on it. Thanks very much for your help, your enthusiasm, your pro-education stance, being education aware, and your ability to jump in and help with this big project, academic accountability project. Thanks, everybody.